Hey guys, it's Brand from In My Head channel, and I'm back with a kind of a preview video sort of thing. And I've got a feature that I'm going to be starting in 2019. And you know, if you've been watching my channel, you know I've been reviewing the hell out of some Kiss albums. But I've never really reviewed another album of any sort. So, starting in the first week of January and about every other week throughout the entire year of 2019, I'm going to be reviewing around 26 to 27 albums that I feel are a part of me. I grew up listening to these albums. I grew up in the 80s. So in 1980, I was 11. And some of them go into the 90s. I think, maybe. But I'm going to do them kind of like I do my Kiss albums. I'm going to give details about the band, about the album as much as I can. Give a little bit of details on the songs if there are any. Real easy to find information on the internet about Kiss and their background to their songs and stuff like that is because they've been around so long and they have so many fans who just contribute stuff onto the internet and everything. With other bands, it's a little harder to do, especially some more obscure bands that kind of came out in the 80s, made their mark, and then kind of faded away. But I want to go through, I'm going to pop up the album covers because these are the albums I'm going to be reviewing, and I'm not going to be reviewing them in this order. This is just how they just happen to be on my list as I was thinking about them, or as I was listening to songs. I'll be like, I'm going to review that album. I'm going to review that album. So I'm going to start this, and I'm going to keep on doing it, but these are the ones that I have for at least for 2019. So here's my list. Alice in Chains, Facelift. I love this album. This is a great album. And I'm going to say I love this album to a lot, but you're going to, of course I love parts of these albums. They're all different parts of these albums. But like I said, any of these albums or songs that are influential to me. And so that's why, for whatever reason, for those reasons, I'm including them on this list of albums I'm going to review. So yeah, we start off, well, I'm not going to start with Alice in Chains, but Alice in Chains Facelift is going to be reviewed. I'm also going to review Dio's Holy Diver. Holy Diver was one of the first type of metal albums like this that I remember hearing. And I just remember being, enamored by some of the songs on this album. MÖTLEY CRÜE, Shout at the Devil. I remember 1983 when Shout at the Devil came out. I was 14 years old. And this album right here, and albums by other bands during this time, is what all but stopped me from listening to Kiss. I went through a real dry spell with Kiss during this time because I have owned so many copies of Shout at the Devil that I have wore out records. I have wore out cassette tapes. I have wore out or lost CDs. I love this album, and I'm really looking forward to reviewing Shout at the Devil. Guns N' Roses. I'm actually going to be reviewing 3 Guns N' Roses albums. I'm a huge Guns N' Roses fan. I'm going to be reviewing both Use Your Illusion 1, 2, and I'm also going to be reviewing Appetite for Destruction. So yeah, Appetite for Destruction, Use Your Illusion 1, Use Your Illusion 2. I like different things about each one of them. And like I said, I like Guns N' Roses as a whole. They're one of my favorite bands. So yeah, Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion, and 1 and 2, and Appetite for Destruction. Pretty Boy Floyd. Now, Pretty Boy Floyd is one of those bands that a lot of people are like, what? But Pretty Boy Floyd, there's some songs I really don't care for on this album, but there's some kick-ass songs on this album, and it's a good bit of cheese. And I just thought it'd be cool to review this album. It's one of those. I heard a song from it the other day on Sirius, and I'm like, oh my god, I hadn't listened to that album. I hadn't heard that album in forever. I don't even think I own this album anymore. I may have to find it. I know I can listen to it on the internet and stuff, but whenever I start thinking about songs like this and albums like this, I want to find them at least in CD form. Rat, Out of the Cellar. This is another one of those bands that when this album came out, during that, 80, 82, 83, when all these great 80's bands came out. This is another band that made me all but quit listening to Kiss, along with Mötley Crüe. So I'm going to review Rat Out of the Cellar. Bang Tango, Psycho Cafe. This is another one of those albums that I heard one of the songs off this the other day, and it wasn't Someone Like You. It was one of the other songs. And I was like, oh, crap. I love some songs on that album. I won't say I love the whole album, but I really like a lot of the songs on this album. And so I'll be reviewing Bang Tango, Psycho Cafe. Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. Now, don't shoot me over this one, because there was a point in time that Bon Jovi kicked ass and didn't suck. And a lot of people say, oh, Bon Jovi always kicked ass. Bon Jovi they caught a lot of hell. They caught a lot of shit. But I tossed back and forward whether I was going to do Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, or if I was going to do New Jersey. New Jersey was when I think they really started working towards being, even though it's a really, really good album, don't get me wrong. Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, and New Jersey is probably they're probably in my top 40 favorite albums, believe it or not. Even though I don't listen to them very often and everything, it's one of those things I just don't think to do. But then when I do listen to it, I'm like, holy crap, this is really good. So we'll be reviewing. I chose to review Slippery When Wet out of the Bon Jovi catalog. Cinderella Night Songs. I remember when this album came out. I remember the video. I remember Shake Me, and then Nobody's Fool, and there's some really good songs on this album. And a lot of these albums, I'm not only reviewing them because of the hits, but I'm reviewing them because of some of the deep cuts I like on the album. Don't be surprised if you find me really digging into, you find me skimming over the hits and really digging into the deep cuts. So yeah, Cinderella Night Songs will be one album. I think it's the only album out of their catalog I'll be reviewing. It's the only one I really like. They changed too much for me after this album. Def Leppard, Pyromania. Hands down my favorite Def Leppard album out of their whole catalog. Everybody always goes to Hysteria and all the other albums and everything. And some people like, On Through the Night, their first album. But Pyromania, man, it's the album that did it for me. I remember when this came out. I think it came out in like 82, if I'm not mistaken. I was around 13 years old, and I just remember being just totally blown away. And like I said, you'll be surprised that I like a lot of the deep cuts on this album, not a lot of the hits. And there were a lot of hits, but yeah. So Def Leppard, Pyromania. I believe that's the only one out of their catalog I'm reviewing. Dokken, Under Lock and Key. Now, I really like Dokken. Dokken is one of those bands that I feel like they would have done a lot better had they not been swept up in all the glam. I just never felt like it was really them. But Under Lock and Key, Dokken's got some really good albums. Back for the Attack kicks ass. And, they did, Tooth and Nail. Man, I really fought between either doing Tooth and Nail or Under Lock and Key. Because Tooth and Nail has some really good songs, but the production value on it hits me a lot. Under Lock and Key, that was made off of the success that they had with Tooth and Nail. So they still had some nice songs in the repertoire to be recorded, but they had the production value too. And then when they moved on to Back for the Attack. Back for the Attack was just very well produced. Some of the songs started slipping a little bit, but yeah, I'm really excited to review Under Lock and Key. Extreme Pornograffiti. Extreme Pornograffiti is one of those albums. Extreme 2 Pornograffiti. I'm sorry. Extreme is a band that I'm not a fan of as far as it's not one of my go-to bands. If somebody's like, "Oh, name one of your favorite bands," Extreme's gonna slip my mind every single time because I'm not an Extreme fan, but I'm a fan of this album. You know what I'm saying? You can be a fan of an album and not really be a fan of the band. And that's kind of my case with Extreme. That's almost kind of my case with Bang Tango and some of these more obscure. I'm not really a fan of the band. I'm more a fan of the album. So that's what I'm going to review, Extreme 2 Porno Graffiti. Faster Pussycat, the debut album. Now, Faster Pussycat was one of those bands that when they came out, and everybody's just rocking their asses off in the middle of this glam. They're seeing how fast they can play, and then Faster Pussycat comes out with this album where they sound old school, and they sound like old school rock and roll, and they played out those big bodied guitars and everything. And Faster Pussycat is one of my favorite bands. I really like Faster Pussycat. I really like this album. They immediately started going sideways, in my opinion, with some of the other albums. I'm not a big fan of the Whipped album. And the name of the album after this one kind of escapes me. It's the one that's got House of Pain on it. Wake Me When It's Over. That's what it's called. Wake Me When It's Over. I went back and forth to do, either I was going to do Wake Me When It's Over or I was going to do this one. But this one right here, man, this is the album I love out of theirs the most. And a lot of deep cuts I really like on this album. LA Guns, Cocked and Loaded. I tell you what, when it comes to LA Guns, man, sleaze rock all the way. And man, I really had a hard time picking which LA Guns album I was going to review first. I may choose others as I go along. But Cocked and Loaded was just, I love their first album. They're self-titled. The songs on it just are freaking mind-blowing. Just sexy and sleazy and dirty. It was everything that I loved at 13, 14 years old when these albums came out. And, but, once again, the production value, it was kind of like, it was really bad. It was almost like the production value of a lot of these bands' first albums. It's like the record companies in the very beginning, it's like they put them out, they gave them a chance. They didn't spend a whole lot of money on them in the studio. And they put it out, and then if they did good, on their second album, they got carte blanche on the studios and stuff. This is LA Guns' second album, and it was recorded digitally, entirely digitally, no analog tape, and you can really hear it in the sound. But the songs on this album just kick ass. There's a couple throwaways, a couple stinkers as far as I'm concerned, but we'll get into that in great detail. And even this is a band that evolved so much. They started off with the Hollywood sleaze, kind of, off the first album, which I love. And then they went into, songs like Rip and Tear on this album. And then they had, Hollywood Vampires, Over the Edge, Anyway, I don't have the things in front of me, but anyway. So we're going to go on to the next one. Love Hate, Blackout in the Red Room. Phenomenal album. I cannot wait to review this album. And Love Hate is one of those bands that I really like the band, but they went, in my opinion, like I said, they went south really quick. I was really disappointed in their second album, but I really, really love this one. This is one of the albums that, man, like I said, I don't want to spoil too much, but I can't wait to review it. MÖTLEY CRÜE, Too Fast for Love. So, those of you who saw me picking Shout at the Devil, you're probably like, what the hell? Where is Too Fast for Love? Too Fast for Love, man. I love me some MÖTLEY, one of my favorite bands. I got to do Too Fast for Love also. I really like the MÖTLEY catalog. Theater of Pain is probably, now out of Too Fast for Love, Shout at the Devil, Theater of Pain, Girls, 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 and Dr. Feelgood. Let's just cut it there at Dr. Feelgood. Theater of Pain is probably my least favorite, but it is still really good. It's got some good deep tracks on it, some good deep cuts, but it's probably my least favorite. Just be honest with you, I'll probably eventually end up reviewing the other MÖTLEY CRÜE albums as well, and I know my friend Scott Henderson wants to review some of them with me. So we may just have a Saturday where we just review every damn MÖTLEY CRÜE album and I just break it up into a bunch of videos. Who knows? Okay. Now give me a minute here. Don't laugh at me too much. Poison, Look What the Cat Dragged In. This came out when I was a senior in high school. And when I was a senior in high school. This was the anthem of every chick in during that time. You know, these guys looked like the chicks during that time. But this is a phenomenal first album. And if you're honest with yourself, you know that it's a phenomenal first album. This is the one that gave, you know, Poison their start. The production value is good. It's not as great as, you know, Open Up and Say Ah, or, you know, any album that would follow, because they got bukus of money. And Poison did very well. The only thing that killed Poison was internal. They died internally. But yeah, so Look What the Cat Dragged In. Looking forward to reviewing this one sometime in the coming year. Quiet Riot, Mental Health. Now, this album right here, another one of those early 82, 83 albums. And Quiet Riot came out and Bang Your Head and Come On Feel the Noise. I was a sophomore in high school, and this was the jam. I mean, this is what everybody was jamming to. This album was a mega super hit. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of Quiet Riot, but I am a huge fan of this album. There's some really good songs on this album, not just the two hits. There's a lot of good deep tracks on this album. One of my favorite songs of all time is on this album. So I'm not going to say what it is, but, you know, one of my favorite songs of all time is on this album. Yeah. Slaughter, the debut album. Now, like I said, don't turn the video off yet, man, because you know you guys probably like some of these songs too. But Slaughter, man, what a debut album. It's you know, it's not really aged, and you know, and I admit sometimes, you know, the lead singer, hell, I forget his name, you know, crap, his name's right on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, I'll throw it up in the video. I'll throw his name up, but his voice gets a little whiny and gets on my nerves, and you know, but this album right here, great album. It's the only this is one of the albums I'm a fan of. The album, not really so much a fan of the band. In my opinion, they fell off pretty much right after this. You know, a lot of people probably don't think so, but I do. So we're looking forward to reviewing Slaughter. Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry. Now, this is one of those, like I said, those early 80s bands that cut their way, you know. I mean, and I like a lot of these bands that was, you know, Kiss, you know, they were based off of Kiss, you know, bands like Twisted Sister and Wasp and things like that. Man, you know, they took Kiss's torch and they just kept going. I'm just like, you know, I remember, like, why wasn't Kiss making albums like this? Why were they making albums like The Elder and stuff like that, you know? So Kiss, you know, I've said before, Kiss went from creating trends and you know, not necessarily directly copying, but taking people and mishmatching, and they went from creating trends to following trends. But yeah, Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry. I'm not a huge Twisted Sister fan. I like Dee Snider and everything. I don't like this album because I'm a Twisted Sister fan. I like this album because I like Stay Hungry. It's a really awesome album. Vinnie Vincent, Invasion. Now, I'm reviewing this one basically because I'm a Kiss fan. And I remember there were some songs off of this album that I liked. Now, I've not listened to this album in its entirety in probably 20 years. Probably since the mid-80s. So I'm looking forward to reviewing this and kind of getting to know this album again. I know that I'm not a big fan of the really high screamers, or if you do, you have to do it a certain way that I like. I'm kind of picky, but anyway, Vinnie Vincent, Invasion. Yeah, I'm going to review it. Warrant, Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich. Another band that I kind of group in with Bon Jovi and Poison, and you know, and Warrant. You know, Warrant though. Warrant went on to produce some really good albums, to make some really good albums. This was their first album. It is killer. It's got some killer songs on it. It's got that production value that you expect off of a first album, but it works really well for them. I won't say that I'm a Warrant fan, but I really respect Jani Lane and his songwriting abilities and everything, and rest in peace. But yeah, so I'm going to do Warrant and talk about the songs on it that I like. And Whitesnake. Whitesnake is one of those bands that this album, when it came out, the way David Coverdale plays and the way a lot of the guys on this album plays, I'm really looking forward to reviewing this album, because there's a lot of stuff around this album that a lot of people really don't realize. So I'm really looking forward to reviewing this album, not just for that, but not just for the music and the killer songs on here, but just for some of the stuff that surrounds this album that not everybody knows. White Lion. White Lion is, I actually am a fan of White Lion. This is my favorite album by them. This is a really, really, really good album. I saw White Lion open for Ace Frehley. After Ace Frehley left, he played in Hickory, or was it Charlotte? I can't remember. It was either Hickory or Charlotte. But he played in White Lion. He was playing as Frehley's Comet, supporting his album with Rock Soldiers on it. And White Lion was his opening act. Nobody knew who White Lion was. And boy, by the end of that year, everybody knew who White Lion was. So I'm looking forward to reviewing the White Lion Pride album. And then earlier I had Warrant, which I had Warrant for Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich. And I really liked the album Cherry Pie. So I'm going to review a second album, Warrant, Cherry Pie. Probably the only two Warrant albums I really like. I've listened to others and Dog Eat Dog and stuff like that. And you know, I saw an interview one time where Janie Lane blamed the grunge movement for killing metal, and I disagree. The grunge movement didn't kill metal. Metal rolled over and died in a lot of ways because, you know, you had your A bands, and then you had your copies, which was the B bands, and you had your copy of the copies, which were the C bands, and you had your copies of the copies, which were the D bands, because the record companies were trying to hire anybody. If you sounded like Warrant, they wanted to hire you. If you looked like Bon Jovi, they wanted to hire you. I mean, I'm getting ready to review the Kiss albums that was coming out during this time, Crazy Nights and Hot in the Shade, and everybody was trying to sound the same. Everybody was using synthesizers. Everybody was wearing makeup and bright colors and teasing their hair, and everybody had their own gimmick that they were doing. And today, even to this day, when I'm listening to like Sirius Radio and I'm listening to Hair Nation, and some of these late 80s songs come on, I'm listening by the bands, I'm listening to them, and I'm like, that's why the 80s died, is because the songs just started to suck so bad. So yeah, but that's not the case in the case of Cherry Pie. So I'm going to do Cherry Pie. And my last one, I guess it kind of did these in alphabetical order. But yes, Wasp. This is another one of those early bands, that early 80s, you know, that came out. You know, in the 82s, like I said, it came out during like kind of like the Twisted Sister, the Quiet Riot, the early 80s stuff that came out, Dio, stuff like that. And I'll have the years and the release dates and everything whenever I put them out. But yeah, I remember this album, and I remember Wasp just being like, holy crap, it's a new Kiss. But they were just so much more out there. They were wild and crazy. And Blackie Lawless is just phenomenal. I love his voice. And like I said, I'm just really looking forward to reviewing these albums. And so that's what I've got for now. Now here's where audience participation comes in. Have you watched to this far? If you've watched to this far, here's where audience participation comes in. Think of an album that I've not included in my list that was released sometime between, and you know what, and you can just send it to me. If it was released, I want to stick to the 80s. So between, you know, 80 and 89. If I look, and some of these albums was in the early 90s and they still sounded like metal, I'll take it. But send me an album from this period. Put it down in the comments. Comment an album that you would like for me to maybe consider throwing in and reviewing. And I'll let you know. I'll mention what I'm going to do when I make these, I'm always going to mention the next video that I'm going to review. And if I get a viewer review, I'll mention you by name. I'll be like so-and-so from so-and-so. You know, I'll get in contact with you, and I'll get, you know, I'll just, or if you want to remain anonymous, if you're one of those people you want to remain anonymous, I'll just say, hey, I had a subscriber or a viewer, you know, suggest this song or suggest this album. So, but down in the comments, leave me the name of an album and the artist that you'd like for me to review. And sometime through the next year, these don't begin until January 2019, but sometime during the next year, if I choose it, I'll throw it in, and I'll make sure to give you a shout out if you give me your information. All right, that's it. That's all I got for now. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, show that you like it. Be sure to click on my face here to subscribe and hit the notifications button so you find out when I put out new videos. Click on this video here if you want to see another video by me. It'll probably just be something random. But anyway, that's why I'm Brant, and I'm tongue-tied, and this is in my head. And I'll see you next time.